Hello and welcome to Conversations with Cully and Conlon. I am your host, the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully, and we have a very special episode for you today. First, my cohort, co-host, the entrepreneurial genius of Connecticut, Maria Conlon. Maria, well, hello.
What's up? That was a good intro. I like that one.
Yeah, I know. I just do it right on the spot. Also with us, we have another Maria, Maria Shaker. Hello, Maria.
Good morning. I'm so honored to be here with another Maria
I,
and all you guys.
Hey, two Marias is better than one, right? I like it.
Totally.
and then we have coming back amazingly only a few days later, Miss Stephanie Schindel. Stephanie, hello.
Woo-hoo.
Good morning. Early morning.
Yeah, Stephanie is in California and she got up for this, so I owe her big
That's
time.
love.
Oh,
It's amazing. And then we have Erica Higgins, my good friend Erica Higgins, who is helping out with the interview. I wanted to get the best of the best to talk a little bit about women's sports because it's been on the rise recently, and it's actually huge. It's really like a revolution that's been going on, and I figured who would have the best insight? Probably some of the best athletes that UConn has ever had. So that was my thought, and thank you all for participating. The one question I wanted to ask, what do you think is different now than when you guys played, as far as encouragement for participation and everything like that? Were there a lot of coaches that guided you back then, or do you see now like more encouragement, more incentives, more pushing for girls to compete in sports? And guys sometimes would joke around with girls about it, but now it doesn't seem as frowned upon. Now it seems like it's a big deal. I'll start with Stephanie. What do you have to say?
Well, I guess I'm not sure. For me, it really feels like what has shifted a lot is the opportunity.
Yeah.
There were opportunities. Oh my, there we go. We're losing the phone. Before, but to your point, it was maybe fewer and far between, or in certain areas. But now it just feels like there's been this movement almost. And so now it's more celebrated. There's more opportunity. I think to your point, there is more encouragement to do that and to excel. There has been a bit of a shift.
And also joining us, of course, the best of the best, Miss Bethany Hart Gerry. Bethany, thank you so
thanks
much
for letting me in. Sorry to be late.
No, you're not
Popping
late.
up calls,
You're good.
doing all the things.
Yes. Believe me, it's no problem at all. So the question I asked is, what do you think has changed from now until when you participated, as far as interest in sports with being guided, like being encouraged to play sports, where, back when we played, I don't think there was as much of a push or as much encouragement for girls to play sports. Now I think that it's good, and I think that there's a lot of support for it. But do you think there was definitely a change from when you started until now?
Oh, there's definitely been a shift. And I think a lot of it, there's been a lot of trailblazers. And, I think there's been some great high profile athletes that have really leveraged not only their athletic ability, but their voice to push for equal pay, to push for women to be able to compete beyond college, to compete beyond into motherhood, with support, even at the Olympic Games this year with the nursery, for moms to be able to bring their babies. So I just think there's a lot more support for women and girls to push the limits to what, it was basically once you were out of college, you were done. type of mentality, or even for a lot of girls just through high school, was their only opportunity. So I think there's a lot more opportunities, and those athletes that could use their voice to push for that have made a huge difference, and leading up to this year and then into the Olympics.
I definitely agree with you. There have been so many trailblazers that have come along in the last few years that have pushed it to another level.
Yeah.
100%. Maria Shaker.
I think we became parents, and we had such a great experience playing sports, and we want the best for our kids, and we knew what kind of impact sports had on us, that we're like, oh gosh, we got to get our daughters involved in sports too. And I think my mom, she's awesome. She got me involved in everything when I was little. She was a little bit timid maybe in speaking out for women's rights, that sort of thing. I have a much louder voice than she does, and I want to get my daughter in there, and I see a lot of my peers, my generation, doing a lot of the same, wanting equality for our kids, for our daughters. So I think that has added to the momentum as well.
Yeah, I agree with that too. 100%. Miss Maria Conlon, my cohort.
Yeah. So, I mean, I
It's
think
your show.
Yeah. I mean, I think all these ladies hit it on the head. I think, a few things I would add is like women rock, right? And when I say that, I think women inherently are supporting other women more, which I think has really helped the growth. Like, I love nothing more than when I see another female be successful, whether it's in sport, whether it's in motherhood, whether it's professionally. And I think to Bethany's point, a couple of trailblazers, because it takes a couple of people who have voices that people will listen to kind of set that standard, and then everybody else kind of jumps on the bandwagon. I mean, I played on the boys team from fourth grade all the way to 8th grade because there wasn't enough girls who were playing basketball. And I think part of that too is like, we talk about, we're moms, like Maria said, and we're preaching that. But I think the cool part is there's a lot of former male athletes that are having daughters, and maybe they're realizing like, hey, I still want my kid to play sports. And I think a lot of male athletes out there that are supporting female sports has been huge, and really pushed the envelope a little bit with just awareness and equality and all of that. So it's just a cool time to be a part of women's sports in general. Like, it's just so exciting.
I like that you're giving the men a little credit. Thank you. We definitely deserve it.
Yeah,
we are supportive.
Talk about, like, yeah, I mean, I think if it's just women, like it was in the past, like you can only push it so far. But you're seeing men, like I use Kobe Bryant as an example.
Kobe and LeBron,
like
I agree.
Yeah, like he tagged Girl Dad, and I remember, obviously rest in peace, but he did a really cool interview where his daughter Gigi she was around when people kept saying like, you got to have a boy so you can continue your legacy. And she was like, no, I got this. And
yeah,
he was kind of the first one in the NBA to jump on that bandwagon and become like a huge fan of women's basketball and women's sports in general. And I think it takes some of that to, trickle down and get other people to jump on. So, the men have helped. We will give them a little bit of credit, just a smidge, right?
Yeah, just a little bit. Erica, go ahead. You had a good question that you wanted to ask.
Yes, but on the heels of that one, I just want to say I'm a mom of 3 boys, and I had the pleasure of washing all of your uniforms. I worked in the cage at UConn. So your sports bras that were all tangled in those big, huge safety clips, that was my job, is to to do all that. So I'm a mom of 3 boys, and my oldest is a junior in high school. And 2 weeks ago, he was supposed to be coming home after football practice. And he texted me and he's like, Mom, all of the football team is going to the girls' volleyball game. And I was like, yes, that was my sport. That was my sport in high school. So I was like, that's awesome, dude. And they filled the stands. And I was like, that is awesome.
That's great.
The next day, they actually had 2 back-to-back games. He's like, we're going to stay. We're going back to the volleyball game tonight. And it got me like really thinking that I went back to my high school days and we didn't have like a huge following of like the football players or, you know, the soccer players or anything. It was like, yeah, I mean, we were really good, but nobody really, our parents were there. So he came home and I'm like, oh, and you have no idea how happy that made me, is that you're supporting girls sports in a way that I was never supported. And he's like, what do you mean? Why wouldn't people come watch you? I said, oh, and you know, almost 30 years ago, it wasn't a thing. So it things are starting to turn. And again, that gives credit to, I guess, parents and boys in general at this. They're really starting to support women's sports.
Well, and if you don't mind if I jump in, I think there is this shift in this narrative. I mean, I have a boy and a girl. My son's older, my daughter's younger. And a couple of years ago, there was a conversation about something my daughter wanted to do that my son kind of made this comment like, well, but that's a boy sport. And it led to this shift in this narrative. But why? Why is it just a boy sport, right? And so I think we are kind of setting this stage where it's all equal, right? There's so many opportunities for both boys and girls to do so many different sports that we don't have this, well, that's a boy sport and that's a girl sport, you know?
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
That's awesome. Good for your boys.
Yes, it makes me a proud
mom. Yeah.
And Maria has a special place in her heart for my son too. So I'm sure that makes you proud, Coach.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I'm not surprised. O's such a good kid, so
he's a good boy. But I do have a question, and I figure that you guys are the perfect audience for this. As a mom of athletes and the travel sports world, right? I've been in it. My son played travel basketball and travel baseball and travel soccer. We didn't really have that. Like there was no AAU volleyball back in the day. There was no, you know, there was 2 teams for basketball. There was ODP and something else for soccer. There wasn't like a huge conglomerate of all of these travel teams and this competition and all of that. So what's your take on that? And do you think it complicates things more for kids who might want to play at the collegiate level? Whereas back in the day, you were sending VHS tapes to every school you wanted to play at and hope that they would give you a call. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you can go ahead, Stephanie, again, because I know you mentioned that you had played club volleyball, and that was what got you recruited more so than the school team. So in some instances, it can help, but it's something you have to do year round. I mean, they expect a huge commitment from you.
It's a huge commitment. It's a huge financial commitment.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate because I think volleyball probably has some limitations compared to some of these other sports, but I was on a competitive travel team. So we were all over the country and had that opportunity. And that's the only reason I think the exposure came. So that I think is fortunate. I don't have children, so I don't know nowadays kind of, where that's changed. A lot of my teammates, I go watch their kids are in the club scene there. So for volleyball, it might be, a little bit different. But it was really a unique experience. And I think for a lot of sports, it does give you that additional exposure. But because of the expense, because of different things, that's not necessarily accessible to everyone.
Right.
So I think, I don't know what the answer is, but I think there should be some, things that can be done to expand that opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. I would go to Bethany because you did track, and track is a whole different operation. There really isn't a lot of, I don't believe, club sports, but there are different meets that you can compete in that help you get that kind of attention for recruiting with college coaches. And I believe that's what helped you. Like, I think you did the Penn relays, you did a bunch of different things. And the funniest thing is the sport you ended up for track, your event, you didn't even get in high school.
Yeah.
You did it in college.
I actually attribute a lot of my success to being a multi-sport athlete.
Yes.
I was a gymnast for a long time in my elementary, middle school years, and I had done soccer and then kind of took a break and was heavily immersed in gymnastics. And then in high school, went back to more of the did soccer, did track. And I think having the multi-sport background lended itself to give me skill sets to be good in other sports. And it's interesting with my kids, I go back and forth. My son is heavily involved in Ninja Warrior type training, and
that's crazy.
It's so much fun. It's such a great outlet for him, and it's great body awareness, kind of like gymnastics, but it's a year-round sport. There's a heavy competitive schedule that starts in September. He's also plays soccer, but we're starting as a 10-year-old going into 5th grade with these conversations around, I want him to continue to multi-sport. I think he's too young to specialize. I think there's value in doing an individual sport, doing a team sport, the different things and skill sets for both sports. So he and I have a lot of hard conversations around sticking to soccer and honoring that commitment. And the ninja season's long. We don't need to compete till November, December. So we're a little bit not on the same page with that.
Well, there's only 24 hours in the day.
And also the expense, right? The expense plays into it. But I think at certain ages, allowing our kids to participate in a variety of things is really important. And I think as we get older, again, I'm not into the college, like what the application process looks like, what the recruiting process looks like, to know at what age it makes sense to be more on travel teams and have that more honed in experience. So maybe, I don't know if somebody can speak to that, but I think for my younger kids, we're leaning definitely more into multi-sport.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. And unfortunately nowadays, that's not happening as much.
Kids, it's really hard. A lot of his teammates are pulled in, like doing baseball club and travel and soccer town and travel. Like, it's crazy.
But isn't it better for them developmentally? And that's what my husband has always said. And Maria and I have had conversations about this too, is kids that just play one sport from a young age, like they're going to get hurt because they're not using the other muscles that they should be, especially when they're going through puberty, because that gives them, like, they go out and they run and all they've been doing is playing baseball and running, 40 yards to a base. They could tear something much easier than somebody who plays, like you said, multiple sports, especially.
I feel like there was a collegiate football coach a few years back that said that a lot of his top recruits were multi-sport athletes. They didn't just play football. I don't remember who it was. But.
You are correct. You are correct. And that was Nick Saban. So you are correct.
Thank you.
Maria Shaker, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know you also mentioned playing club volleyball as well, but it is a huge time commitment. You're going year round and you're traveling. I mean, it takes away sometimes, or it makes it more difficult to play other sports.
Yeah, somehow we made it happen. My mom was my chauffeur. She took me everywhere, and I totally agree with Bethany. I only have a 5-year-old right now, and hopefully she likes athletics as she gets a little bit older, but I'm going to make her like athletics. No, I'm just kidding.
It took my younger one year until she was like 7, so hang in there.
We watch a lot of sports in the house, so maybe it's
Perfect.
Permeating into her brain. But I totally agree. I think that being a well-rounded kid, like not just with sports, but like dabbling in arts, figuring out piano, using all parts of your brain is so important for their development and for their health. I don't want anybody getting burnt out. And, just talking with friends who have older children and how cutthroat it sounds. I mean, the parents sound like they're crazy. No offense if you're one of those crazy parents. But like people are arguing and fighting on the sidelines. Like that's not what we should be demonstrating at all. And, I really believe in the power of being a well-rounded athlete. I think that's where I got a lot of my athleticism. I learned to use different muscles. I think it made me, I had a better vertical maybe because of it. And, I'm a little bit shorter when it comes to volleyball athletes, but I think it's really important to play as many sports as you can, or, find your interests and continue with those as long as you can, and then focus your energy.
And you're also a doctor, so I take what you say to heart. Absolutely. My other Maria Conlon, I have told you the story about one of my other co-hosts who his son is 6'8", and he was taking private lessons for basketball since fourth grade. And then, he played on the varsity as a freshman. And then this year is his senior year, and he doesn't want to play. Like he hates basketball. He wants to watch Disney movies and do gymnastics. And just because he got pushed and he did too much, especially because he did a lot of travel as well. What are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, your two kids play.
Yeah, well, my young guy doesn't play anything yet.
Right.
Just destroys things throughout the house. But so I have a 12-year-old daughter and an almost 2-year-old son. I'm like all over the place with this question because I think you guys all hit so many different points. So I actually have a travel AAU program for basketball, and my whole inspiration to start it was exactly what some of you guys were saying. Like the first year my daughter played, it was so insane and so intense, and she was like 9 years old, and the parents were absolutely crazy. And as a athlete and as a coach, I just like couldn't do it because it's not what it's about. So I started a program that's really built upon just giving kids a chance to play year round if they want.
It's inclusive.
Yeah, and kind of really focus on the joy of it, because I'm really big on, like, I want my daughter to do multiple things, but I want her to do them for the right reasons. And I think sometimes parents like kind of pigeonhole their kids want them to do and end up being really unhappy. I think the basketball travel world is so insane. Like there's like 20 different organizations. There's 6. Part of that because you're giving all kids an opportunity to play, but it's also setting up an unrealistic perception of where they are from a talent perspective. Like every parent thinks their kid's going to go to UConn, which is just not reality. So, and then in basketball, we've seen an increase. And if you just take UConn women's basketball as an example, like the last couple of years, we've seen such an uptick in season-ending injuries. And I'm sure ladies on the phone know Hootie, and I talk to Hootie still pretty frequently. And like, I always ask her, like, what is it? Of course, she gets blamed, right, because they're getting injured in college. But it's not college; it's the early specialization. Sports and the wear and tear on your bodies over years. And
oh wow,
like in basketball, it's not just playing year round. These kids have trainers, so like they're going and doing an hour and a half individualized workout, then they're going to the track, then they're going and doing strength and conditioning, and then they're going to practice. So it's pounding on their bodies, the same joints, the same muscles over and over and over again, and they're starting younger. So, back in the day, I started at 11, so by the time I got to college, I was only playing year round 6-7 years. These kids are starting at like 8 years old. So I think I do think it's a little bit of a problem. I'm really big on multi-sport athletes. So I coach at a prep school, and I make all my kids participate in a fall sport. And I do that, one, so that they're in better shape for basketball, and two, it's so they're not burning out those muscles before the season. So we'll do like 2 basketball workouts a week, but a lot of them play soccer, a lot of them do boot camp at school, or they play volleyball. And it's kind of a taboo because you don't see a lot of coaches that are really like wanting their kids to play other sports because they're so afraid they're going to get hurt. And I'm the opposite. I want my kids to participate in multiple things. And I think as a regime, if we can get coaches to be on board with that, like I remember in high school, and it's still the case now, our softball program was really big at Seymour, still is. And so the softball coach didn't want any of their players playing basketball. And I think that's bad, right? Like we have to support other sports as well and encourage these kids to branch out. I think we're getting better at that, but I still think we got a long road to go. And again, I think we just have to go back to the joy of it. Like the sport should be fun. And if you're specialized in worried at 10 years old if you're going to get recruited by UConn. Like, that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot
of pressure.
These young athletes that, like, a lot of them just can't live up to, and it's not their fault, but, you know, there's not many people that can play at that level in the country. So, you know, I think as parents, we just got to be realistic with expectations and filter that down to them as human beings first, and then as athletes. And the more people like you ladies on the phone can do that and preach that, the better we're going to be.
Yeah. And Maria, to your point, I feel like the opportunities we had when we were younger, it was, you could do club, right? Versus now, like, you can do club, you can do town, you can do AAU, like you can do, there's like 15 options for your one sport.
Yeah. And I think that,
and you're starting younger.
Yeah.
They're having access younger.
Totally. And it plays into like that first question, Steve, like, you know, what's the difference between then and now? I think the opportunities now and what's changed is so dramatic. And I'm in the thick of it because I coach still at that level. But these kids, like, between social media and like there's a guy in New England, like, imagine this. He is ranking the top 6th graders in the New England area.
Wow.
Like,
what?
Yeah, he has like a 2029 prospect list. And I'm like,
please,
oh gosh.
Please let me know who he is.
Like, how could you even?
I'm going to take a ride out there.
And by the way, like, what does that do to all the other 6th graders' self-esteem that maybe are just playing for the first time? You know, it's so insane out there with pressure. So like, you know, my daughter wants to play basketball and basketball only. I'm trying to get her to do other things, but like, it's so tough. And I'll add on to that, like, the time component. Like, she doesn't get home from school until 4:15. We have homework for a good hour and a half. So it's like, where do these kids fit the time to do all of this stuff and live up to the pressures? It's really, really hard. Really, really hard.
Yeah. Erica, you had a pretty good follow-up question for what Maria just said. You can go ahead.
I do. So in talking with you the 4 of you guys and what you're just saying, one thing that I have noticed, especially with my son and him playing travel baseball and travel basketball, is because there's so many of them. And when I was playing sports, and I know I can guarantee when you guys were playing sports, loyalty was a huge part of that. Being part of a team, being loyal to your team, building relationships with your teammates, you know, doing the pasta dinners before games, like all of that camaraderie, that was such a huge, huge part of what we did growing up. Now you're seeing these kids, and I will say it comes a lot from the parents, is that if their kid's not getting the playing time with one club, they're like, we're out. We're going to the next club and we're going to get this. And they move and they move and they move and they move and they keep moving. And they think that they're going to eventually just be that star athlete that every coach prior has, not saying that they're a bad athlete, but they might not be getting that playing time. I feel like that's a huge void in children's teenagers' development, that they're missing that sense of loyalty and team. And they're getting this added pressure from their parents. I will say 99% of it is coming from their parents because they think that their kid is the best. That scares me as a mom and as a, you know, member of society, that and somebody who hires people, right? Like I hire people. So for me, I'm like, what sense of loyalty did you learn when you were younger? If you're not going to be loyal to me as an employee because you weren't taught loyalty on your, you know, 7th grade travel baseball team, what do you guys feel about that? I mean, it's a hot button for me just because I see it. And it just happened with my son's soccer team. They lost like 5 kids and they went to Hartford Athletic thinking that their kids are going to be that much better. And he's like, Mom, like we were really starting to gel as a team. So we had to have this whole talk about loyalty and what that looks like. So I'm curious what you guys think of that.
Yeah, Stephanie, I know you don't have kids, but you've seen it with some of your friends, and I'm sure you've experienced it as a player yourself. What do you think about all that from what you've seen and observed and experienced?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I have a child development background, so this ties in, like my head is spinning. I have a whole lot on this, but I think it's beyond, I think the loyalty is a huge thing, but I think it's way bigger than that. I think it's kids are missing work ethic. Like, I think they're missing how to be resilient. And I think, obviously, I assume parents have the best intentions. So I don't think it's malicious in nature, but you're robbing your children of really critical times. Like, I played for one of the most competitive clubs my sophomore year, which was very different than the club I had played for before. 4 nights a week, 7 to 10, like the commitment was intense. And I was not at all the best person. But I grew so much. And sure, I might have had some tears some nights after practice, but the grit, you develop knowing who you are about yourself. And back to what you said, Erica, about I'm thinking of how that translates to as they get older. And you don't want to be the best person in the room in your profession or whatever. If you really care, you want to always be surrounded by people that are better than you. They're going to challenge you. And so I think there's a lot missing in these children's development, and it's not their fault if this is what is being modeled to them. But I see it. I'm hiring now too, and it's really interesting and difficult to watch. And the expectation, the immediate gratification that if it's not here, I'll just go somewhere else. But you're missing so much developmental skills, in my opinion, that is not just to athletics. This is like for your whole life, and especially professional, which most people will have after their athletic careers in some capacity.
I can attest to Shindig's grit. She and I were teammates, and she'd be the one who demanded the ball, at a critical point in the match, and I'd set her up, and she'd get us a kill and the point. So all that hard work and maybe not being the best in her club really paid off for later on in life. So kudos to you, Steph. But you guys, I was just listening to a podcast yesterday, Dr. Becky. I have a lot of parenting struggles with my 5-year-old, and I
love her.
She was talking to Reese Witherspoon, and they had this exact conversation. And Reese said that she was talking to her kid one day and actually said to her kid, maybe you're not the best at this. Maybe there are other people who are better than you. And Dr. Becky was like, that is one of the most important things that we can do as parents is, showing our kids that other people are better, be surrounded with them, those other people, so that we can, compete with them, become their teammates, learn that everyone on the team is important, even if you're not playing. There were plenty of times that I was calling myself the bench captain, but man, was I committed to cheering as loud as I could from that bench. I mean, it's just so important. There's so many lessons to learn, in addition to the loyalty to the team. So thanks for bringing that up, Erica.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, I feel like, so I was an alternate on the Olympic team, and I feel like when we set these kids up to feel like they have to be the best, that's why when I go to talk to classrooms, like my son's 5th grade class, they wanted to have me in, which my son apparently told me is not cool anymore to have your mom come in, which broke my heart, but I was like,
Aww.
Okay. But there's sometimes like I have these feelings like when I tell them I'm only an alternate, because everyone's like, did you win a medal? We set this precedent that you're not good enough if you didn't win a medal. And to your point, Maria, about everybody has a purpose. My son's been struggling with soccer because he's not the best. He's an amazing ninja athlete, but he's like okay at soccer, but he's the fastest kid. He's a great midfielder. And I'm like, you have a purpose. He's like, but I don't score goals. I'm like, that's not your purpose.
That's not your job. Right.
Right. Like, just, you don't have to be the one to score the goals. You don't have to be the one to, be the goalkeeper. Everybody has a purpose. And I think when we put these kids in these positions where you're pulling them from one place to another because they're not the best there, but I'm going to find the place for you to be the best, sets this precedent that that's the only thing that's good enough. And that, not Erica, sorry, Stephanie up in the corner. That there's so many developmental lessons to be learned, that everyone has a purpose, and you're losing all of these amazing life skills when they're doing this to these kids. And that's a parenting issue. And I don't know how we manage that and how we temper that, because it's coming from the parents, because these kids are just along for the ride.
Yeah, that's not they
Most
have a
times.
choice. Their
Right.
parents are the ones that make the decisions for them.
Right.
Maria, I agree. And I would say the biggest thing is overcoming adversity and learning that at an early age. If you're not playing on a team, it's for a reason. Instead of being pulled from that team to try to go to another team where you think you're going to play, you don't have that work ethic to put in the time to get better and overcome adversity, which you're going to have to do in life. Whatever you do, you're overcoming adversity. And that's such an important skill. And for a kid to be pulled from team to team to team, they're not learning that. All they're learning is, okay, I'm going to get rewarded if I'm not playing well. I'll get a chance to go to a new team and maybe I'll play there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
I mean,
think.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Which Maria are you talking to?
I think you, Maria Conlon.
Yeah, Maria.
So I call this generation. You guys will like this. This is the transfer portal generation.
Oh, yes.
Because you see it in all aspects, right? And it kind of starts with, like, I'll use the NBA as an example. Like, LeBron James wasn't winning in Cleveland, so he went to Miami and he built this like super team, and then they got older, and then he went back to Cleveland and built a super team. So I think these kids are seeing it from a very high, level. Where back in the day, like Michael Jordan played with the Bulls almost his entire career, right? So
correct.
You're seeing these kids are a product of what they're seeing, unfortunately, and I think it trickles down. Like, you talk about bouncing from different club programs. I talk about it in my AAU program. I go, all right, who's hitting the transfer portal this spring? Like, who's transferring to a different program because they're not getting exactly what they want? And I do think it's a parenting issue. I think one of the best things I ever did a couple of years ago, when it was the season that my team won the state championship, I made all of my kids read The Energy Bus. So I don't know if you guys have read that. It's a great book. I think every kid, before, like, freshman year in high school, before they play any sports, it should be like mandated that they read The Energy Bus. And I think it's because it really teaches you, right, that, like, everybody serves a purpose on that bus. Every purpose isn't the same, right? But everybody's energy to their purpose is what's going to make the bus run. And I think, like, I try to preach that to my daughter. Unfortunately for her, like, she constantly compares herself to me and so to other people. Like, I'll be at a game. And this was like heartbreaking last year, but I was at one of her school games, and she's actually really good. And a parent didn't realize, like, she was standing behind me and said, like, oh, that's your daughter. Well, she's not as good as you. She's not going to be as good as you. And I was like, so now I'm like, as a professional and a mature, like, functioning adult, I'm like, do I just, like, smack this lady? Do I just go, like, full out Valley on her, or, like, do I take a step back? And I just said, she's not as good as me yet. And I said, that's a really twisted way to think about a seventh grader. And I wanted to say, like, you need help, but, I think that, as a society with social media, like, that's what kids are doing, right? Like, they're comparing.
Constant.
Yeah. And I think it's a real, like, I don't let my daughter have any of that stuff, but she, they still do it. Like, oh, this one's better at driving to the basket than me. And I think as parents, and especially as moms, I think it's so important to have the dialogue with I think it was Bethany that was talking about the podcast, but I have that conversation with her constantly. Is like, we need to, as moms especially, is point out all the positives, but also make sure that they understand, like, you can't be perfect at everything, and there's always things that you need to work on. And I think in sports, like, if you're not a lifelong learner and a student of any game or anything that you're doing yourself a disservice. So I just try to constantly preach that to her. Like, if you feel like you're not as good as that person in that, great, because that means you got some stuff to work on. And as long as you're feeling that way, you're moving in the right direction. So I kind of twist it into a positive of like, good, I'm glad you're aware that this person's doing it a little bit better than you. What are you going to do about it? You know, and I
Yeah,
think
that's great.
those dialogues and those conversations is really, really important. And I think it's got to come from mom, you know, because I think we just have a softer approach to that. But yeah, I love hearing all these comments because I also started, and Erica knows this, I just spoke at her son's school like a week ago. I started this enterprise, Work Harder, and I spell harder, HEARDER. And I'm really passionate about teaching young kids to align themselves with activities and hobbies that really come from the heart. Because I really feel like if you're doing something you love and you're passionate about, it never feels like work. Like we all know that when we're in alignment with what we're meant to do, like you don't get tired, like you could do it all day long.
Yeah.
And I think as parents, if we back more of that energy, and really like highlight the things that we see them light up about, it changes some of those difficult conversations, because even if they're not the best at the thing that they really love, at least they're doing what they love. And if they continuously find joy in that, they'll just get better automatically. So, you know, that's kind of how I feel about some of that stuff.
Maria, you just got yourself an 8th job. You're going to start doing talking agreement or talking engagements for parents.
Speaking engagement.
Yeah. No, I would love to. I had a situation with AAU over the summer, actually on my daughter's team, where there was some like bullying and stuff, and it was coming from the parents. And so I called a parent meeting and I made the kids sit in, but I spoke to the parents, like not towards the kids. And I just said, we have a real issue on this team in terms of, you know, being inclusive, you know, respecting diversity, respecting talent levels. And I had a lot of parents come up to me afterwards and say, like, I don't know if you were talking to us or them, but like, I needed to hear that. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, no kidding. I see you at the like, everyone needs to like chill out a little bit and just like be in the moment with your kid, right? Like there's just not enough of that. Like there's too much trying to live vicariously through your kid instead of just living with your kid, right? In their moment, individually, uniquely to them. And I just think that's so important as moms and as parents, that if you're like, no matter if your kid, like my kid could play terrible, after the game, I'm all smiles. Like,
yeah,
because you did it, right? Like you competed, like, you tried to be the best version of yourself. Like respect that and appreciate it.
Yeah, I've had to make a concerted effort to, because the coach in me, when my son competes or my daughter wants to like coach them after and tell them like what they can work on and how they can improve. And to your point, Maria, I'm like, you know what? Whether they win this game, lose this game, they do have their best performance or worst performance. Every time they come off, I want to be the mom who's like, you put yourself out there, you worked hard, you're awesome.
100%.
My husband has this thing called, he calls it Coach Dad. So my husband coached my oldest in basketball for a lot of years, and he'd be like, they get in the car afterwards, and he's like,
your husband's great, by the way.
Nah, he's all right. Don't give him too much credit. His head will get big.
Great.
Yes. So he'll get in the car and he'll be like, okay, Owen, do you want coach or do you want dad? And he gives him the choice of like, do you want criticism of how you played or do you want dad? And all 3 boys. My youngest doesn't get it as much because he's only 7, but that was something that Owen and Jack really took to, is because it wasn't like, you played horrible and blah, 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 and you should have done this and passed the ball this way. I mean, that's not my husband's demeanor anyway, but regardless, it was like, you have a choice and you can pick which one you want first. And that's just worked. And it's been really fun to like listen to their conversations. And then I chime in and they're like, you're not coach or dad. So I'm like, okay, fine.
Maria Shaker, because you have a 5-year-old and a 5-year-old who hopefully will be playing sports. What is your feelings on this?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I mean, I agree with everyone. I was just like swimming in the wisdom of Maria Conlon and just what she has been doing and how she's inspiring people to be better versions of themselves as parents, as players, and all that. So, I mean,
Nobody gives back more than Maria, believe me.
I was like taking notes, like, oh, good, I'm glad you're aware. Looking up work harder. I love that concept. I mean, I totally believe in that, like letting the child, kind of find where their passions are. I think, I'm a little bit of the absentee parent at school, but my daughter is in a Montessori school, and they always talk about letting the child lead. And it's really hard for me to do that, but I believe in it because I think that's where, with a little bit of parental direction, I believe that's where they gain independence and resilience and grit and, figuring out what things they enjoy in life and gaining their, just how to do things and being independent little versions of themselves. So I just love all of this. Thank you so much for inviting me to hear all the wisdom of all these great people in all the blocks, the Hollywood squares around me. I love it so much.
And Maria, you should give yourself a lot of credit because I think it's easy when we've been elite athletes or like had this passion for sports, and then we have kids, right? And we want that for them because we know how good it made us feel. But to know to not push, right? To like let them explore art. My 5-year-old, well, when she was 5, she's 8 now, and she has struggled to kind of get into sports. But I've really had to just let her drive that train, and it's been really hard because she is athletic. And I'm like, if you would only, but we have a strong Montessori background too, and I love that approach. And so we've just kind of let her, I'll have her pick whatever she wants for the spring or the fall. And she picked swimming. And then like after a couple months, she had a lot of anxiety and it was more stressful than it was worth. And so we pulled out and we took a couple years off from trying sports. I was like, you know what? And then she wanted to do art. She's very creative and loves it. And when she was 7, she's like, you know what? I think I want to take ninja class with Riker. And I was like, all right, let's do it for a few months. Give it a try. So kudos to you for not being the pushy parent to be like, just try it. Because she'll get there in her own time and do things that really are a passion for her. So, and that's hard to sit back and just wait.
Yeah, Maria does a great job with that. And Maria also ran a basketball camp that was pretty much free for anyone to come and join. And I think she said they also provided breakfast and some meals for them. Maria is the king of giving back. So I give her a lot of credit for that.
Queen.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm with a bunch of girls. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Come on, Steve.
I just want to make a comment that I think is imperative that we didn't really touch upon, and I'm curious everybody's feeling on this. Like, sports are great, activities are great. I think that the most important thing that sometimes is missing in society right now, and we see this with bullying and all this other stuff, is like the person being a good person at the forefront. So I'm really big on preaching to my daughter, like about kindness and everything else. And, sometimes she gets pushed around a little bit because she is so nice. And sometimes on the court, I'd wish that she would be a little bit more aggressive. So it's kind of backfiring on me. But, I think all these skill sets and different things that we're all talking about really align to, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day what you're really good at if you're not a good person, right? Like,
valid.
I think as moms, especially, like, to me, that's so much more important than any athletic skill or hobby that she'll ever have. Is like when I pick her up from a play date, nothing makes me light up more than when the mom says, like, she is such an amazing kid. Like, thank you so much for having her come over. That is like the ultimate for me. And I think that's kind of helped with some of the conversations that I've had with her. Is like, I always kind of bring it back to that is, okay, maybe you didn't play as good as you wanted today, but you were a good sport. You were great with your teammates. Like, that humane aspect of it has to come first, and then all the other stuff, right? Like all the skill, all the athletic stuff. And I wish we just had more of that out there. So I thank all of you ladies, because it sounds like you all are doing it, which is awesome. maybe you guys can all come and be like surrogate parents for some of these kids on our AAU team. It would be awesome. But I just really feel like that's really important, and just being like doing what you preach to your kids is so important. I'm sure you guys feel that too. Like my kid sees me get up every morning and she says, "Oh, I have 8 jobs." And why do you do this? Why do you do that? And I'm like, because I want to teach you. I want to show you through that what you can do if you align with your heart and you work hard and you just treat people with respect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maria has 47 jobs, not 8. But yeah, you're 100% right. You have to give respect to get respect, and you have to be a good person, or else you're going to get yourself into trouble. Stephanie, I wanted to ask you, we're talking about women's sports, and it's really grown over the last few years. You personally, are there, because there's more opportunities, especially with coverage on ESPN, to watch women's sports. Are there any sports in particular that you enjoy watching that has grown on you? Because the ratings have gone up for just about everything.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, all of them. The fact that I can now turn on the TV and see everything, obviously just coming off of the Olympics, that was incredible. Watched everything. I'm very into track. Bethany, watching all the women was great. And yeah, seeing volleyball, which was hardly ever on TV. So having that opportunity, obviously I'm partial to that, but this huge shift in the WNBA has been incredible. And now just not saying you're supporting it, but having opportunities to actually turn it on and watch. Tennis. I mean, I've always been really into sports, watching sports, but I wasn't to what female sports were available to me when I would turn on the TV. So it is nice to see. I've seen a huge uptick, and it's nice. Like you feel the shift happening, and not just that it's the exposure, but the support behind it has been huge. And that's
100%. Bethany, what about you? I know you're very, very busy as well, but do you watch any sports in particular, any women's sports?
I hardly ever put the TV on.
You read.
I'm in that phase right now between work and kids and after school stuff and evening stuff. Like there's not a lot of time.
Yeah, there's not
a lot of time right now.
Not enough
but
hours.
Even the Olympics, we did not watch as much as I'd hoped to watch. We got on Peacock when we could to watch some replays, but
it's tough.
Yeah, life's a little bit of a whirlwind right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And especially when you do have a family and you do have kids, you don't have a lot of time for yourself. Your life is your kids. I agree with you. Maria Shaker, do you watch anything in particular? Has anything grown on you recently?
Grown on me? Actually, tennis has grown on me. I didn't used to always put it on TV, but love watching it now. I get really into it. Takes me back to the days I was learning how to play tennis and I hated it because it was too hot on the court. But in our household, I mean, we are partial to volleyball. It's incredible how much more of it is on TV, especially with the Big Ten Network and the SEC. So we watch a lot of that. And it's so funny. Steph and I were just watching UConn volleyball on Hulu the other night. I was like, what? They're on TV? This is so crazy.
I can't find the football games, and you're finding the volleyball games.
The connection was a little spotty, but it was just really fun to see that, Hulu was broadcasting a whole bunch of matches all over the place. So, yeah, it's great that there's so much more access to watching it in our living rooms.
Maria Conlon, I know that you watch everything, but you're impartial to the WNBA. And you and I have talked extensively about the growth of the WNBA and how they just got a new contract, 11-year deal. It's going to provide the women with better pay. Everyone hopefully will be at 6 figures, and we'll start to see some women at 7 figures. I mean, you watch everything, but would you say the WNBA is in women's college basketball, your 2 favorites?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for obvious reasons, I watch a lot of basketball. I really enjoyed the Olympics. Like I loved watching the volleyball. Her name is escaping me, but the track athlete who won the 400-meter hurdles, I still am like in awe of the fact that she like ran the hurdles faster than some of the people ran like the 400
without them
to jump over it. Like
yeah.
I was watching some of that stuff, and honestly, I'm in awe of like so many different women athletes right now. It's kind of insane, and I don't know if it's just because I have like we're talking about more access to see it, because I'm sure it's been around. I mean, I know people are breaking records left and right, but I really enjoyed that. Obviously, it's football season, so I'm watching football a lot right now. But
Yeah. You don't like the kickoff.
yeah, I even watch like a little more soccer than I have in the past because I have a couple of athletes that play soccer. So I'm really like I'll watch any sport that's on. If I'm not like, you know, binge watching the Bear on Hulu, but you know, I actually just started watching Perfect Couple on Netflix. I highly recommend it. It's really good.
Oh, all right.
I read the book. I want to see the movie now.
Yeah. But no, I watch a lot of sports with my daughter, and like she just wants to watch basketball, and I'm trying to like get her to watch other stuff. You know, because I think that's important. They start to feel a little bit more gravitating towards something that they actually have seen. And I go to a lot of games, like at my high school. I have friends that coach all over, so I'm just really big on going out and supporting anytime I can.
Yeah, I know Bethany has a heart out. I just wanted to get one more question for her before she goes. Just your final thoughts on everything that we've talked about. Just the rise of women's sports. It's a women's revolution. Everyone is watching, men, women, boys, girls. It's definitely growing. And do you see it continuing just to get bigger and bigger and bigger? And, you know, like you said, equality with the men as well. Where do you see it going in the next few years?
I do. I think it'll continue to grow. Having a daughter, I'm super excited to, you know, whether she continues on in sports or not, to just know that she potentially has those opportunities. Yeah, I think it's going to continue to be a movement. I think that it will empower so many more little girls and teens and older athletes to pursue sports and enjoy them. And I think it's really exciting because sports obviously holds a really special place in my heart and my life. And it has given me skill sets for my life that I rely on. Parenting is probably the number one hardest thing I've ever done, second to sports. And it's interesting to have this mindset and in my parenting of my athletes that I have now, given the level of competitive sports that I was able to achieve. So I think it's really exciting times, and I think it'll continue to grow.
The last question I wanted to ask, I watched the Hope Solo documentary on Netflix, and I just thought that was incredible. The adversity that she had to go through from her own teammates and everything. I was shocked by that. I didn't know that any of that went on. But have any of you guys had difficulties with teammates, something like that, where you would be in the situation where you disagreed with them and would abandon them, like she kind of got abandoned by her teammates, or in some instances maybe she deserved it, I'm not sure. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, about teammates, if you had any difficulty with teammates and handling that situation. Stephanie.
I've actually been really fortunate.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have friends from when I was 15 years old on that, you know, that club team that I always, you know, reference because that was kind of the turning point. So I've had more, I'd say, challenges with certain coaches than I have teammates. So I've been really fortunate that the team was always such an integral part, and I've maintained those relationships throughout life. Obviously, college, we have so many chats. We talk all the time.
You do. That's right.
So I am very fortunate, but I have seen, you know, and known of others where that can be, you know, really unfortunate and detrimental. But I have to say, I actually have been quite
good. Erica, with your kids, have they had any problems with their teammates at all?
So unfortunately, my oldest got a taste of
that's right.
grit
Yeah.
and reality. He's a really good baseball player, but he actually got cut in the spring, his sophomore year. And as a mom, I also got cut my sophomore year from the volleyball team, and it pushed me harder to go back the next year. And we won states that year, and we won states my senior year. But the situation that occurred after he got cut from some of the other players that made the team, I'm not a mom to ever step in. I try to let them figure it out and work through it. This one I kind of had to step in, and I got the coach involved, and I was like, listen, I'm not writing to you because my son got cut. Like, I get it. It's a life lesson. You chose that. He will come back next year if he feels that way, like with vengeance, and he'll make that team. But what occurred was not any way that you would want the high school represented, and what you're trying to build as a team atmosphere. And Owen was like, I can't believe you wrote that email. And I let him read it before I sent it. And he was like, and I said, in a bad way, oh? And he's like, no, Mom. He's like, you have, standards that you feel, a team should have. And he's like, you got that from the way you were coached. And I said, that would never have been tolerated ever. When I was cut, people were supportive of me. They were like, you know what, Wolke, come back next year. You got this. Like, it'll be all right. He had the complete opposite. And that to me was heartbreaking as a mom.
Yeah.
So they actually, ironically, the kid who did it mainly saw him at a party this summer and pulled him aside. And he said, I'm really sorry I did that to you.
Oh, good.
So I think he sat in it for a while, and he realized, like, you really had, a really crappy impact on a kid at a really, really tough time when his world just got blown up. Yeah. So I try to let them fester and figure it out themselves, but sometimes, you can't, because it's not right. And I'm teaching my kids to be kind and to be good kids and to do the right thing. And I said to my husband afterwards, and I was like, should I raise my kids to be assholes? Like, do they get farther in life? Like, I feel like I'm missing this.
Don't do it.
I know. Because my oldest, Maria, knows him very, very well. He calls her if he's, in a rut with basketball, and she gives him the talk that my husband nor I could give him. But he's a good kid. And sometimes the good kids,
they get picked on. They suffer.
Don't get it as good. So he dealt with it, and then he got recruited to play football this year. So they're doing it all.
And what a great way to model how to handle that situation.
Yeah.
Right. In a positive and respectful way to still speak up for yourself. I think
he met with the coach after. Like, that was the other thing. The coach called me the next morning. He's like, I want to meet with Owen Monday morning in my office. He's the assistant principal of the middle school. Drove him there. They had a 35-minute conversation, and he's like, do you want me to handle it? What happened? And Owen asked him not to. Owen said, nope, just let it go, let it be. But he had to step in and own it. And I'm like, I only asked you for 2 more years, kid. And then you're
on your own.
On your own. And yes, you can call me and I can give you advice, but I need you to have these situations, not because I want you to, but because you need to know what it's like to sit in crap, and you need to figure out how to get out of it.
Yeah.
Bethany, same with you.
Just
you, if you have a take on it, you can give it.
No, that's okay. I have to run. I have a client, but this was awesome. Thank you so much, Steve, for inviting me. Ladies, this was incredible. It was such a great conversation, and I look forward to seeing the replay.
Yeah, it'll be aired. Believe me. I appreciate your being here. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Bye, ladies. Bye, Steve.
Bye. Miss Maria Shaker, difficulty with teammates and how you would handle that situation if you have experienced it, or if you have it with your 5-year-old as they get older and play. How would you handle it?
There's difficulty every day with the 5-year-old. In terms of difficulty with teammates, I don't know. I think the only thing I can really recollect is, teammates being down on themselves and, trying to help them get out of their like emotional rut, like boosting them up, giving them, all my positive energy, trying to reignite their internal fire, that sort of thing. That's what comes to mind initially. I mean, there were some, conflicts earlier in life and, about playing time, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to try and avoid that and going back to, we all have a role on the team. And, they come at different times and we're all important members, and just trying to, really stand my ground on those sorts of things. But, yeah, I've been really fortunate too. I've always had really great teammates and great coaches who have drawn the best out of me. And gosh, there's bad teammates in life currently, right? And work.
No, you're right. Every day we deal with it. Every day we deal with it. 100%. 100%. You're right. Maria, you've pretty much already answered this, but I'll ask you. Final question. The women's revolution, the women's, all the ratings are going up. There's so much more interest. The arenas are packed. Do you see it continuing to grow and become this juggernaut and everyone getting involved in it? And it's going in the right direction finally. And it's taken so many years, and there's been so many pioneers and influences, like other people have said.
Yeah, I think that I think the future is bright. I think we have so much young talent out there still. I mean, I see it every day in the coaching world. I think that kids are really set up for success in a bunch of different ways. And I think that, this is just like a train that's just going to keep on plugging. I think that, there's enough people that believe in it now, right? Like it's a thing. So I think like we're still on the ground level.
We're scratching the surface. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're still on the ground level. I think that we're really going to see an even bigger shift in the next 5 to 10 years. And it's exciting stuff. And I don't just mean like with basketball. I mean across all sports. I just think that there's just a different buzz out there right now about women's sports. And I think that the more that we can, again, like getting back to what I originally said, like support each other, like not just the sport that you played, right? Like I always used to think that the biggest critique that I would give people is like, people would say, well, why aren't there people in the stands? And I'd say, well, why aren't you in the stands?
Exactly.
But go buy your ticket, go support, turn the TV on, like go make yourself aware of all the different amazing athletes that are out there, both on the men's side and the women's side. It's almost come to a point, honestly, where like people are like right now, people are talking about women's sports more than men, which is kind of awesome. Like we talk about Stephen A. Smith and First Take and all this other, you know how I feel about him, but like it's on the ticker every day, where when I was growing up, like it was very like few and far apart where you would see any of these announcers and these TV people talking about women's sports. And now
it leads. Yeah,
like on my news stream, like I see more about women's sports right now than I do about men. So I think it's just the beginning. And it's exciting.
Stephanie, what do you think? Women's revolution. It's grown in the last few years, and I just the next 5 to 10 years are critical. Do you think it's going to continue? Do you think it's going to become a monster?
I do. And something we didn't really like touch on this too much, but what I've seen is really women being able to step more in their authenticity within sports. I see it professionally as well. And kind of what I mean by that is, Maria said earlier when talking about parents, like we have sometimes of a softer edge. And I feel like it was kind of ingrained in us both, I think, through athletics and professionally. To really get ahead, you had to be more like the men, more,
aggressive,
win at all costs, aggressive, assertive, and now women are finding ways, we can do that, but in a slightly different way. And then things like with like the mental health aspect and taking
huge, yes.
And seeing some of these women, Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka, like giving a voice to, like, that's a component, because we are humans first before all these things. So I just feel like it really is scratching. There's so many different levels to this, but bringing it back, it is bigger than just sports.
Correct.
So yeah, I'm excited to see, kind of this trajectory continue. And again, it crosses between personal and professional and athletics. Like, but I do see like a shift and acceptance of women having space, being able to take up space in all these situations.
Erica, your thoughts?
My thoughts are, as a mom of 3 boys, I love watching the little girls that are being, they do like a zoom in when you're watching the WNBA, and they have signs and they're all dressed up. And like, I never had that as a kid. I never had female role models that were like athletic, like I just didn't. It wasn't a thing when we were growing up. So watching these little girls having, last week, Sue Bird was at Mohegan Sun, and, my friend was there, and they zoomed in on Sue. And I used to hang out and drink with Sue. So for me, it was like, but they idolize, and it is, and she's a positive influence. And, they're same with Diana Taurasi, all the, they are just good people, they're not, and this might sound sexist, but there's a lot of men's sports that they do bad things, and they continue to play, and they continue to, they get forgiven. I was at a game where I was at a Bucks game. I'm a huge Bucks fan. When oh my God, Brown is his last name. Antonio Brown. He took off his jersey.
Yes, when he left,
had a temper tantrum on the side of the field. I was there. I watched it, and I sat there and I was like, "This is what should not ever happen." And kids are looking and watching this. You don't see female athletes behaving like that. And that might be a generalization, but I find that watching kids looking at athletes, that whether it's basketball or soccer or, volleyball for that matter, I think it's awesome. And I think that is going to continue to be a positive thing, especially when you have, my son came home from school 2 weeks ago, and he's like, "So we had this UConn basketball player come and she talked to us." And I was like, "Who was it? I probably know them." And she's like, he goes, I don't remember her name. I'm like, "How do you," Pete, my husband, I thought he was going to lose his mind. He's like, "How do you not know who it was?" And he goes, "Conlon." I'm like, "Jack,
come on."
Like, want me to call her right now? He's like, "That's the Maria that's your friend?" And he was like, she was such a good speaker. Then it was all of a sudden, like, he just wanted to tell me about the Work Harder and tell me all about it. And I sat there and I was like, he had no idea who you were, Maria. He knew you, but he didn't know you because he never really met you. But he knew us talking about you, and it's a positive influence on Owen. And she was really cool. So, like, and he was a teenager. They're 7th, 8th graders. Like,
it's tough to talk to them.
That's a tough audience. But
that was the toughest audience I've ever seen.
She said that. Yeah, she told me that.
7th and 8th graders was like insane.
She told me that.
Yeah. But he learned from you. So that's the point. Like, you're a positive influence. And that, to me, I think that's the change in at least women's sports, is like, I think when I was in middle school, if a woman basketball player from UConn had come to talk, the boys would be like doing spitballs. Like, they just wouldn't care, And now that's a huge shift. So it's going to keep going.
And Dr. Shaker down there, what do you think with last word? Women's revolution, next 5 to 10 years.
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to take it back and just, it's so exciting. I think that, I was thinking back, like, how did this all happen? Like, who really initiated this revolution? Where did it come from? And I have to say, I think it's UConn basketball for having a dynasty, for, taking the level of basketball, like, up 10,000 notches and elevating everyone else around them in the country and gaining, garnering the attention of the nation, and just what they were able to accomplish and making everyone around them better. Because you guys used to plow through teams, right? And now it's like so competitive, and everyone wants to be a part of that. And I just think, it has gained so much momentum, and it's going going to continue on in that trajectory. And I really hope that, some of it rubs off on UConn volleyball and we're able to gain that momentum too, because it's happening elsewhere in the country. So it's just really exciting thing to watch. And I want to stay young forever and be a part of it.
Well, I want to thank all you ladies for being on the show. I think this was an excellent episode, and this is gonna do very, very well because you spoke passionately and you spoke honestly, and you all made great points, not only about women's sports, but you made great points as parents about parenting and dealing with difficult situations with your kids and how you would handle them. But I appreciate all of you committing to doing this episode, and it's gonna be a milestone, I promise. So I would love to thank all of you for Stephanie, Maria Conlon, for Dr. Maria Shaker, Erica Higgins, of course. I am your host, the best podcast host in the University, Cully. This has been Husky Talk, Conversations with Cully and Conlon. Stephanie, Maria, Dr. Maria, Erica, remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges and throw